Let's add an image to this currently very lackluster business card. In order to do that, we go into the Finder, we click, we drag, and it's added to the business card right there. So I'm just going to kind of move it over to the side like this, and we can do whatever we want with it. So let's say I wanted to move it up here, I could. Now, one thing to keep in mind is in order to move this image around, I need to be using the Move tool. If I am on any other tool and I click and drag, it's not going to work. So make sure you're on the Move tool in order to move it around. Now I want to make this a little bit smaller. And in order to do that, we need to use the Transform tool, which is actually not a tool at all. It is going into Edit and clicking on Free Transform. Now pay attention to this right here. Over here it says Control T, which is to say if I were to hit Control T, I could get the same thing to happen. I don't want to overload you with more shortcut keys, so we're just going to go into Edit, Free Transform. When I do that, a box appears around this image, and I can click on a corner. Notice how the cursor changes when I go to the corner. I can click on the corner and I can decrease it in size. Now we run into a bit of a problem right here. And that problem is it is changing in size, but it is also disgustingly misshaping itself. So I am going to undo that just by hitting Escape and try it again. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Free Transform, and hold it. Only this time, instead of just holding it, I'm going to press Shift while holding it. And that constrains the proportions. Now, the reason that we need to hold down Shift is in order to constrain the proportions. If you press different shifter keys, so Shift, Alt, Control, on just about any tool, they're going to adjust the options of what you're able to do. So for instance, on this tool, if you were to try pressing Alt, or if you were to try pressing Control, there's all sorts of other things that you could do. Now, in this case, we don't want any of this, so I'm just going to press Escape. A lot of times, because like what Shift does and what Control does and what Alt does change from tool to tool, a lot of times, because there's so many different options, people get a little bit confused. And what I'm telling you is, if you try to constrain the proportions and instead you get this happening, don't worry about it. Just hit Control Z to undo and try a different tool. Try a different key. So if you pressed Alt instead of Shift, no worries, just hit Control Z to undo it. And then if Control didn't work and Alt didn't work, hit Shift and that will work. So really all you need to remember is that there are modifier keys that affect each of the tools. You don't need to memorize Control does this, Shift does this, Alt does this. Just remember that there is a key that allows me to do this, and try one. If it doesn't work, just press Control Z and try the next one. You don't need to memorize all of this at once. So this looks pretty good to me. I'm going to press OK, and that looks great. And that's how to add an image.